Former First Lady Michelle Obama and former President George W. Bush sometimes seem like BFFs, and now Ms. Obama is talking about the similarities and differences between the two of them, and how much the candidates in the Democratic primary are they spending on ads. I bet that who's spending the most will not surprise all of you, but who's spending the least might.
We are back with Stephen Cobb, a former Obama administration appointee and former Deputy Attorney General of Virginia, and also Kelsey Bolar, senior news producer at the Daily Signal and visiting fellow with the Independent Women's Forum. All right, these ad spending dollars through December 17th, so interesting if we could throw them up on the screen. So, number one, dude has been in the race for like 23 days, and he's already spent $100 million. Michael Bloomberg. Steyer, the lesser billionaire, as I call him, is coming in at $81 million. And then Sanders, who has the most successful grassroots fundraising operation in the history of the country at a measly $8.6 million. I mean, Stephen, you just can't possibly compete with the limitless funds that these billionaires have to pour into this race. It's disgusting.
But to your point, those two billionaires have yet to see themselves crack the top five of any national poll.
Sure.
So how much of this is throwing good money after bad? When you talk about Iowa, you talk about New Hampshire, and we've talked about this on the show before. Yeah. It is that grassroots. It is the structure of the campaign on the ground. It's going in those living rooms, meeting voter to voter, and that's where where you've seen people like Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren be able to take hold. And I think it speaks volumes that they're spending pennies on the dollar compared to the billionaires with greater support.
Yeah, they're spending money on fire.
I do. Yeah, exactly. Here's the thing. A lot of this is getting set on fire. But Bloomberg's at 5% in California and Texas, right? He's campaigning in like the South and Arkansas all over Super Tuesday, running a national strategy. I think, Kelsey, it's interesting.
The amount of media coverage.
Yeah, the amount of media coverage. It's just that. I mean, he clearly just bought it, right? I mean, nobody actually likes Michael Bloomberg, and then that's really what we see throughout so much of this. And it really does beg the question. I mean, President Trump didn't run on this. It actually was much more. I mean, he was much cheaper whenever it came to the ad spending, and actually had donors and all these other things, and ran a fairly conventional style campaign. I think it does say a lot about Bloomberg and Steyer themselves that they have to do this.
Absolutely, and we need to remember that President Trump, although he has a lot of money, spent far less than Hillary Clinton did in the 2016 campaign. Yeah. We also need to remember $100 billion is pocket change for Michael Bloomberg.
Yeah, right.
Look, I'm personally pleased to see him stimulating the economy, creating jobs. He's creating good-paying jobs, which is actually making his campaign very
Thank you to the film industry, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Every network.
Pollsters love you.
These local TV stations are shaking their hands.
Exactly. But I read a report that he's actually paying campaign staffers far more than the other candidates, which I think actually in the long run could make him a little more competitive. I personally would be more threatened by that than the TV ads. I just don't think TV ads have the impact that they used to in the past. Voters are more distrustful of campaign spin, and they'd rather see what's happening in the news in whatever news organization they trust.
No one is saying that Michael Bloomberg or certainly Tom Steyer are going to be the nominee. Although we've had a poll here that we talked about morning constantly. Steyer's at 9%. I mean, I want to know who these people are, number one. I'm dying
I'd be curious to know that.
Dying to interview them.
By the way, if you are a Time Star supporter, email me.
Tell us. We want
I will
to
have
know.
you on the show. This is an open invitation.
We want to know about you.
Yeah.
But here's the bigger thing, and I'm not one to defend Pete Buttigieg very often, I think we all know. However, if you're Pete Buttigieg, you gotta be pissed, because he's the one who's dropped down in the polls now 9%, while Bloomberg's come up to 5%. Right. Bloomberg's eating his thunder in terms of media coverage. Like, yes, they're not gonna be the nominee, but the fact that they can throw so much money in garners them so much press attention and does fundamentally shift the dynamic of the race. They are interfering in the election, as Democrats love to say.
It's going to be a very saturated TV networks in Iowa and New Hampshire for the next couple months.
I feel so bad for those people. They just want to watch it.
But part of this, as Democrats, I think we need to hope that this much saturation, while they're not attacking each other and they're talking about a positive vision for the future of our country in electing a Democrat in 2020, you have to hope that will have inroads into helping that voter turnout come next November.
See, I don't know, because the whole thing is Bloomberg's entire case is, well, I can spend enough money to burn on my campaign and on generic ads against President Trump. But I think so much of people look at this, Kelsey, particularly Trump voters, anybody who's on the edge. I mean, is anybody on the edge really going to be swayed by Michael Bloomberg? Right? I mean, if you're in the Midwest, are you going to be swayed by a technocratic former mayor of New York City? I don't think so. I really think a lot of this is just burning cash. But at the same time, I think it's gross that to be able to do this in the first place. What do you think?
I actually don't have a problem that he's able to do this. He has been a very successful businessman, and if he wants to use his success to run for president, we live in a
success to manipulate our democracy.
But he's not necessarily. I mean, money isn't everything. I mean, look at
it's not everything, but it ain't nothing.
Election. I do think it makes sense that he's taking away support from Buttigieg because they're both they have some similarities.
They have the Wall Street
crossover. No, if you want a mayor.
Yeah.
You know.
That's true.
But again, I don't.
South Bend, New York.
But in the long run, I wouldn't be that threatened by Bloomberg because he entered this race sort of claiming that there's no moderates and he needs to fulfill that space. He's not a moderate. No. He's very, very far left on many of the issues.
I wish you were right
and a lot of other candidates have far more developed policy platforms than he does on any of those.
That is true. Now, I actually want to look, though, at the other end of the spectrum because this is interesting, too. I mean, you've got Sanders, Buttigieg, 8 million, 7 million. Yang coming in next at 4.7 million.
Andrew Yang has spent more than Joe Biden.
Double. He's doubled what Joe Biden has spent on the airwaves. I think that comes both from the fact, look, Biden's had major fundraising struggles, but also Biden has a big traditional campaign organization. Yang is much more sort of the guerrilla, more nimble. I mean, he's got a real team, but it's not like
Biden's
the
gonna get more earned media.
Look at that
national. Certainly, the media hates Andrew Yang. That's certainly the case.
Well, also, you know, they're more likely to ask the opinion of the former vice president. Naturally.
Sure, but also he's been completely undercovered.
I just think, well, the crazy thing here is the resilience of the Biden campaign. That actually, I mean, over and over again, I see these people raise no money, spend no money on ads. I mean, the candidate speaks for himself if he can.
I'm going to push back on the notion that it's a pathetic dollar amount. If you're already leading in all the polls and you've spent near the least on television, are you not actually leveraging your resources better than other
candidates? He also doesn't have the money. I mean, that's why they had to call in the super PAC.
He certainly has more money than spend $2.2 million or whatever the number was.
I think he raised $15 million.
But he's getting beat by Warren and Sanders, who aren't going and doing all those high dollar fundraisers and didn't have to send up the bat signal for a super PAC. I mean, it is interesting though. Warren also here has a very different tactic. She has a very big team. She's invested a lot in the ground game and isn't spending much on the airwaves. We don't know what she has. We don't know what any of these people have in their coffers right now. But she's definitely invested more in the ground game than the airwaves.
But if you were a campaign strategist, are TV ads really what you would be spending your money on in today's day and age? If anything, I actually would be putting that money more into digital ads and all different types of campaigning.
I would be really interested in knowing.
Maybe Bloomberg's making a bad call and investing so much in TV.
Do you know what's funny though? The Biden campaign had to pull its digital ads because they weren't making any money off of it. So there you go, even more for an enthusiasm.
Depends on the candidate.
But okay, there was another interesting. I think Crystal, I think you found this, where Michelle Obama was on the Today Show, of course, and she was asked in an interview about a recent dust-up between Ellen DeGeneres and George W. Bush spending time together at the Cowboys game back in October, and she said that they share the same values. I just found this really odd. I mean, they have this whole BFF relationship. What do you think that says, Stephen? I have my own thoughts.
I mean, what's wrong with some bipartisan friendship? I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that they have to agree on everything. It doesn't mean that you knock heads when you're debating policy. But ultimately, they share love and respect for our country. They have families they care about, and apparently they're both football fans. So what's wrong with being able to spend some time with people who you maybe disagree with
I just think
ideologically?
It's kind of disingenuous.
But it goes beyond, we disagree, right? Kelsey and I disagree. Kelsey's not a war criminal. George W. Bush is.
All right.
And, I mean, he lied us into war in Iraq, sanctioned torture, Abu Ghraib. All this happened under his watch. And to just be like, look, they share class interests. They're in the same elite circles now. That's what makes them buddies. And so to see that on display, I find it disturbing.
I think that brings up the whole cancel culture, which actually Michelle Obama and her husband came out and been speaking against.
Right. Only now, though. By the way.
It sounds like you sort of want to cancel George Bush because of his policies.
To cancel George W. Bush for what he did to this country.
Whereas the two of them,
he destabilized the entire Middle East. ISIS is because of George W. We're still in Afghanistan because of George W. Bush. How many thousands of Americans lost their lives because of George W. Bush? How many trillions of dollars? How many billions do we still spend every month because of George W. Bush? That's not like, oh, you're pro-choice and I'm pro-life. That's like people's lives were lost. And to not take that seriously and say you share this person's values, I don't abide that.
All right, we're gonna have to leave it there. Right there. That's a mic drop bit of a situation. All right, thank you guys. Really appreciate it. Tomorrow on Rising, The Hill's editor-in-chief Bob Cusack, he's going to be here with the debrief. And the Sunrise Movement is going to be handing out ratings. We're going to talk about them with their 2020 candidate scorecards.
And friend of the show, Dr. Joe Pesci is going to be here. He's going to give us all a lesson on black holes, one of my favorite topics. Everybody have a great day. We'll see you back here tomorrow.